Let's talk more about that. That's the satellite presentation right there. Let's bring in Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross. Bryan, we talked yesterday. You had talked about the annular structure to the storm. It was a major hurricane in its purest sense, right? But there has been significant disruption to that core, and it has a new structure moving forward.
Yeah, it's more of a typical kind of storm now. The question is, can it reform a core? So an annular hurricane is essentially all core. It doesn't have outer bands feeding into it. It's more like a solid disk, and therefore external forces like we talk about wind shear, unfavorable winds in the atmosphere, or some other factors don't affect it quite so easily. So it got disrupted to some degree over Jamaica, but then it really got disrupted over Cuba. So I think it was wounded over Jamaica and then really injured over Cuba, and it just completely disrupted the core. Now it's showing some signs of trying to reorganize, but it's a shadow of its former self, thankfully, for our friends in the Bahamas. All right, here we are as of the 2 p.m. advisory, estimated 100-mile-an-hour winds, peak winds in the system, but it's not that organized kind of system. So it's not like you'd say, okay, it's right around a well-organized eye, northeast at 15, and there's a pressure at 974, drastically higher than it was yesterday when we saw the incredible 892 on the pressure. The lower the pressure, the more intense the storm. So here is where the Hurricane Center put it at 2 o'clock. There you see the track kind of jogging around north and then northeast up to Cuba, then again kind of jogging around because it encounters the high terrain, and so it kind of bounces off the mountains to some degree, and then it is moving north now that it's over the water. It'll be a more smooth kind of curving off through the Bahamas and off toward Bermuda. Let's look at that closer up with the islands that are affected here. So it's the lower central and the northern southeastern Bahamas affected, but what I want you to really notice here is look at this blow up here of thunderstorms on the left side. So because this is an October hurricane, it's an October hurricane which involves the jet stream coming down and putting flow in it like that, quite often on the left side you get some of the strongest winds. Now, because the storm is moving forward, you get winds extending out farther on the right side. But the left side gets enhanced by the jet stream, and I think that's what we're seeing here now. So Long Island, part of Ragged Island, you may get a significant part of, it's not really an eye wall, it's a developing eye structure there because you can see the thing is very ragged at this point. Let's look on the visible picture and see what we can see here. Well, we kind of can make out a area there that looks like that might be the center, something like that. But look out here. See, the eye is 40-some miles across now, or the eye structure. I guess it's an eye. I mean, they're calling it a closed eye. So, but it's this very large donut compared to the very tight, well-organized donut that we saw yesterday in the much stronger storm. In any case, it's trying to develop thunderstorms around that circular structure, and with the jet stream enhancement on the west side, on this side over here, that's why I think they're blowing up there, and they can be quite intense. There's still plenty of wind because the wind is enhanced on this side by the forward movement. The forward movement is like that. Of course, the winds come around the hurricane like this. So on this side, they add to each other. On this side, they subtract. But you can get a cell develop in the atmosphere that pulls down air from aloft, and you get strong winds, especially in gusts, on the left side of the storm. So in any case, it's that corridor through the Bahamas there that we're concerned about. And here you can see the Hurricane Center kind of lays it out in terms of where the strongest winds are expected to be. Let's start near the center. These are the hurricane force sustained winds right here, and you can see as they're going forward, just draw the line in the direction it's moving. That's the corridor where, if everything works out exactly evenly, then that's the corridor it's going. It doesn't work quite that way. The edges are not that well defined, and it's much rougher on the edges. So if you get one of those big flare-ups and a cell, then that can be wider at that point. But in any case, that's where the Hurricane Center is expecting the sustained winds to be. Here are hurricane force gusts all the way out here, and then here are the tropical storm force winds 40 miles per hour or higher. So you can see exactly where the corridor is going to be, and watch as we put it into motion. Here we are, 3 o'clock this afternoon, mid-afternoon today. Now go forward, and you see that maybe the storm intensifies a little bit up to 105. The atmospheric conditions are a little hostile, but the water is very warm, so maybe the net is a slightly stronger storm moving through the Bahamas. By 8 p.m. tonight, most of it has gone by, but still some hurricane force gusts extending down here into the southeast Bahamas. The Ackland and Mayaguana and Great Inagua will be on the edge of it, along with the Turks and Caicos. So you can see where the strongest winds will be, and then moving on away so that all of the significant winds will be gone by early in the morning, and maybe even late this evening. Things will start to calm down. Take a good while for the water to calm down, obviously, as this storm moves on by. So the hurricane warning is in effect for the southeast and the central Bahamas. Now, what are the Central Bahamas? Well, if you look online, you look at just common sense descriptions, a lot of people include Eleuthera and Nassau in the Central Bahamas, but they're not meteorologically, it's not divided that way. The dividing line is right there. So from Cat Island, the Exumas, all the Exuma Keys here, San Salvador, Long Island, that's all the Central Bahamas. Then down here, Mayaguana and the Iguanas, there are the southeastern Bahamas. So anyway, it's in this area here of the southeastern Bahamas and the central Bahamas where we have the hurricane warnings in effect. There you see the islands. And then the fringe effects, you see here Turks and Caicos and Haiti. Still there's a band that's feeding into this storm going over Haiti. Now, I don't think they're going to get sustained tropical storm force winds, but in gusts, and they still are getting rain. And it's just, I'm sure when we finally do get real definitive news out of there and maybe video out of there of what has happened, it's going to be horrible, because they got more rain than Jamaica did in some of the higher elevations there, and Cuba still has the hurricane warning on the eastern end. All right, then the storm moves on so that by tomorrow evening, this is mid-evening, maybe a 100-mile-an-hour hurricane moving by Bermuda. It's going to be moving at a good clip, but remember, the storm is bigger on the right side, so even if the center stays in the cone, Bermuda could get the hurricane force winds, so they have a hurricane warning up once again for Bermuda. What a year this has been. They certainly are well practiced at getting ready for hurricanes there. And then that'll be that for Melissa. Going to turn into a strong non-tropical storm eventually, and it might affect extreme eastern Atlantic Canada as a non-tropical storm, but going to kind of get involved with that big storm that's moving over the northeast U.S. here at the end of the week in the North Atlantic. All right, so just to mention about yesterday's events, this landfall, and look at that satellite picture. I mean, you just don't see that in general in Mother Nature when something is so symmetric and there's just no influence in any direction that is modifying it. You know, sometimes we see a flat side or we see something, but in this case, unfortunately, right when it came ashore, it was just as pristine a hurricane as you're ever going to see right over this town of New Hope. Remember, the strongest winds are right in there where you see those oranges, about right there. So right into Black River. And then Black River also has a big river there, which is the drainage for rain that falls over the mountains up in here. This is all mountainous. So it's just horrible there in Black River. The video that we've seen is just widespread destruction and flooding. And more water is yet to come downhill. And then Treasure Beach as well, and Alligator Pond, all these coastal places. Got the storm surge and the wind, of course, but the wind corridor was in here and moved across Jamaica like that. We saw that video a little while ago from Discovery Bay. That's on the north coast, some 30 to 40 miles away, and so you saw how the wind sustained that far across the island. So just a comment about this, just for future thinking, there was our landfall time, 1 p.m. Eastern. That was noon in Jamaica. New Hope, Jamaica, Category 5, 185-mile-an-hour wind, which was stunning, of course, and near record-breaking for any hurricane, and equivalent to the highest winds of any landfalling Atlantic hurricane that we know of. But at that time, the computer analysis was for 215 miles per hour, which would have been comparable to Hurricane Patricia when it was, this is not a landfall, but this is in the Pacific off Mexico in 2015. So the Hurricane Center is going to take all this data and look at it, and even data that they didn't have at the time that all this was happening, and see what they think the best estimate is of the landfall. And yes, it could be stronger than 185 miles per hour. But Ian, Patricia, while it was estimated at its peak to have 215 mile per hour winds, was never actually measured. It was measured, and then it looked like it got stronger than the measurement. So they went with 215, and the pressure was estimated at 972, where this one was 872. This one was 892. So, but that was an estimated pressure. Again, they measured the pressure at 879, and then afterward, it looked like the system got even better developed. So they estimated, based on the wind, the 872 as the final definitive pressure for Patricia. In any case, they had a lower pressure. So we'll see. But it wouldn't surprise me at all, based on some of the evidence we have from other kinds of measuring than the hurricane hunters, that they boost this up some, and it becomes the strongest Atlantic landfalling hurricane in the record book.
Yeah, just a mammoth storm by any measure, and we'll be curious to see what that post-analysis looks like. Bryan, we don't have much time left, but I wanted to ask you, it's not certain, but if this is it for the season, what are your thoughts overall? It isn't like we had some big number of storms, 5 hurricanes, but 4 were majors, 3 were Category 5s, and this one, of course, made landfall at peak intensity.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, well, first of all, what can we look forward to in a warmer world? In a warmer world, we expect fewer storms and stronger storms. Is this that? So that's, you have to put that in your head. Is that a maybe? But remember, we did not have an El Nino or a La Nina, so the season really was based on the weather pattern over the Atlantic, and we had plenty of warm water and super warm water in the Caribbean. So if the pattern happened to, for some little period of time, become unhostile, so it becomes conducive for development, then the systems just spun up. But generally, the weather pattern was not conducive on average through the year for systems to develop. And they weren't forced one way or the other by the El Nino or La Nina,
right.
Hostile upper level winds, conducive upper level winds, and so forth. I think it's something like that, but we keep this, the climate reality in our minds in a situation like this.
Yeah, and Bryan, thankfully for the storm-weary southeastern United States, this was a good pattern moving through the season, but we know with this one, what a devastating storm in Melissa. That's Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Bryan Norcross. Thank you.